Okay, we'll go ahead and get started then. All right, so good morning and good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. My name is Karenni. I am the Interim Director for the U.S. Campaign for Burma. Welcome to the event, The Right to Humanitarian Aid, Central Burma and Karenni State, co-sponsored by Migrant, Immigrant, Refugee Rights Alliance, Progressive Voice, the Humanitarian Universalist Service Committee, and the U.S. Campaign for Burma. For the third event in the Right to Seek Safety series, today's panel will be slightly different. While we will discuss the current IDP situation in Central Burma, we will also dive into the humanitarian aid dilemma in Central Burma and Karenni State. Due to the limited access to aid, one of the challenges often faced by IDP camps is shortages of food, medicines, and clean water. There have been consistent calls for humanitarian aid from local CSOs, but this challenge is difficult to overcome as the Burmese junta continues to attack the people of Burma, forcing them to flee from the brutal human rights violations and armed conflict. Our panel will break down the situation in their respective areas and how we can move forward from here. Just a few notes for today's webinar. As we move to introduce our speakers, please type your questions in the Q&A box. You can add the name of the speaker you want to direct your question, or if you want to direct it to the entire panel. And one of our colleagues will be collecting the questions for the Q&A. We do have an interpreter for the event. Along the bottom of the screen on the right side, you will see an interpretation button. Click on the button to choose English or Burmese for your preferred language. Thank you. As we continue on with our event, Kristen Allen is the Associate Director for the Migrant, Immigrant, Refugee Rights Alliance based in New York City. She will introduce our panel and moderator today. Kristen?
We're delighted to host this panel of female leaders today. Each works to support the voice and rights of all people in Burma. Due to the sensitive nature of the work inside Burma and the risk of detention, some will not appear on camera today in order to maintain anonymity. It's my honor to introduce our panelists. First, we have Grace. Grace is a member of the Sagaing Youth Committee. She was born and raised in a small village in the Myanmar township of the Sagaing region and is a university graduate. After the coup attempt in 2021, she gave up her dreams and quit her professional job to participate in the Spring Revolution. At the beginning, she participated in protests and campaigns boycotting military-connected products. Her work to support the people continues as a fundraiser, gathering donations from people inside and outside of Burma. Next, we have Ma Premia. She currently serves as Secretary No. 2 of Karenni National Women's Organization and is a policy board member of the Women's League of Burma since 2019. She serves as an advocate for the UN Committee on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, United Nations Security Council Resolution 1325 on Women's Peace and Security, and in 2021, she became a member of Karenni State Consultative Council as part of the Civil Disobedience Movement and Humanitarian Committee. She previously served as a committee member for refugee repatriation and peace in Karenni State and participated in an advocacy campaign on Voice of Karenni Women by providing policy recommendations from the Karenni women to the government, members of parliament, ethnic revolutionary organizations, political parties, and civil society organizations. Next, we have Ma King Omar. She's a democracy and human rights activist and the founder of Progressive Voice. She participated in the 1988 democracy movement as a student and has since been working for human rights and democracy for Burma. She regularly testifies about the human rights situation in Burma to various international organizations, including the United Nations bodies. Since 2016, she has been the chairperson of the advisory board of Progressive Voice, an organization rooted in civil society that maintains strong networks and relationships with grassroots organizations and community-based organizations throughout Burma. Our moderator this morning is Rin Fujimatsu. Rin is the advocacy director of Progressive Voice. She's been working with civil society organizations along the Thai-Burma border for a decade with a focus on human rights, the rights of minorities, refugees, and internally displaced people. She's worked at Burma Partnership prior to the establishment of Progressive Voice and has a Master's of Studies in International Human Rights Law from Oxford University. Ren, I invite you to start this panel discussion.
Thank you, Kristen, so much for all of the introduction, and Karen as well for hosting this webinar. Welcome, everyone. It's my very pleasure to be able to moderate this fantastic panel of all women speakers today. So I'd like to go ahead and waste no more time in jumping into hearing from our speakers. As Kristen had just introduced, we would like to start with Siama Grace from Karenni State. I think we are all fairly aware that Sagaing region recently came under really heavy attack during actual school hours, and a monastic school was targeted by Russian-made helicopters that were operated by the Myanmar military. They fired rockets, machine guns into the school, and several children were killed in the attack. The IIM is saying that this attack could be war crime with commanders criminally liable. So Sagaing region, I'm sure, as you know, Siama Grace will tell us, was previously considered a strong military hold. But since the attempted coup in February 1, resistance against the Myanmar military has remained incredibly strong in this area, and therefore the attacks also most frequent. So this Sagaing, Magway, Mandalay region is often referred to as the dry zone. Using data I was looking at from the Assistance Association for Political Prisoners, we can see that over 100 children and youth have been killed in this dry zone since February 1st, 2021. So some as young as 18-year-olds. These terror attacks by the junta have led to mass displacement and humanitarian catastrophe. Before we go into Siama Grace's talking points, we have a video that we would like to share with you. If we can go ahead and play that video, then we can jump straight into Siama Grace's discussions.
This is an inner village which has been burned down by the military. We are trying to extinguish the fire out.
Those videos were submitted to Progressive Voice by Siama Grace actually about a month ago. So those scenes that you just saw, they're about a month ago, but we would really like to hear what the situation has been like in the past month, what it's like on the ground now, and also the invaluable efforts that local people are making to address this crisis in Sagaing region. Siama Grace, the floor is yours.
အားလုံးပဲမင်္ဂလာပါရှင်။ကျမနာမည်
Hello everyone, my name is Grace and I'm very happy to have a chance to talk today.
ကျမတို့အညာမှာလူသားချင်း
Our Anya or the Arab Myanmar experience has been experiencing a lack of humanism. We have encountered things that we have never experienced before until 2021, and our people have been denied access to education, that we are subject to child rapes, gang rapes, massacres, and being killed by burning alive. Our homes, properties, and villages were completely burned out. We have been bombarded, and we have been fired upon by artillery shells. Our lives and houses have been destroyed, and we have been forced to flee for our lives. Our Anya or the Upper Myanmar area is considered a major rice bowl for the country. However, today farmers are fleeing for their lives in order to survive. They have no means to grow rice or any crops. They live in anxiety, fear, and stressful days and nights. The situation is getting increasingly dire. The hunter changes its military tactics, and it mobilizes its columns at night and carries out military offensives in the early mornings. Whenever these military columns are deployed, they will launch airstrikes, and they will be firing 60mm and 80mm artillery fires, forcing innocent civilians to run for their life. As soon as we hear the arrival of the hunter troops, the column about a mile away. The atrocities of the military junta is the evidence that the situations including recent events will be highlighted. In Magwe region, in the Lego and Ngatayo villages in Yilechon area of Yizucho Township, that have been targeted by the military since the 13th of August 2022. They have burned down about 830 houses and resulting in over 4,000 IDPs. And that this tragedy has also worsened the shortage of food security because rice and that rice and other crops have been burned down along with the houses. The hunters' troop and the Busoti, the Burma militia members, also burnt down 400 houses out of almost 600 households in the Masayita village, which is located 8 miles away from the Sakai region of Shwebu Township on 25th of February 2022. More than 27,000 residents have to flee for their lives, and 5 villagers, including elders and women, were murdered by the SEC. Another case I would like to present is that of a Layagon monastic school. The terrorist military air force launched a constant area military offensive against the monastic school in Layagon village of Magwe area for an hour. It has triggered a lot of emotional response as a public tragedy. A total of 13 people, including 7 children and 8 adults, including 2 children who died on the spot in their classroom, were killed. I was heartbroken whenever I hear about the stories of the children shared by the parents and the families. When I hear about the bombardments and how people have suffered in Ekong village, it has touched us deeply. When we listen to the stories and that the experience of the parents, it has really made it sad that that I cry every day. I have no idea why the hunter would deliberately launch an aerial attack targeting NM children holding pencils and studying in their own classroom. It is now the rainy season. In the rainy season, it is very difficult for the IDPs to flee for their lives. That a 2-month-old infant among the IDPs from the Yilechon area, Mount Township, was infected with hepatitis B and had died during the same day as they did not receive medical treatment. Some of the IDP women are pregnant, and they had to give birth to their offerings in the temporary shelter. We need the significant health care to save the lives of the people. people remain strong. People remain strong to the movement to encounter where people have to face with atrocities and inhumanity of the hunter. The hunter forces now bluntly rape adult women and young girls in Yilejo, the Miao Township and other townships. These crimes are committed not only in the central part of Myanmar, but also in other parts of Myanmar. So the military has only one purpose: to eliminate anyone who opposes it or who resists it. And the military is ready to fulfill its purpose, whatever it takes or whatever the cost there is. I guess that people helping each other while they endure the various forms of suffering to learn to survive is just another dimension of our people's revolution. That is a revolution by means of helping the people and humanitarian assistance. The local organizations can effectively and quickly respond as much as they can, despite the limitation in the receipt of assistance. Right now, the assistance we receive are quite limited, and yet local organizations are using whatever resources they have received, and they are effectively distributing and allocating the aid that we have received as well. There are many people on the ground who need humanitarian assistance. And it is the local organization like ours who is supporting them with the need as well. While we are trying to help the people who are suffering on the ground as much as we can, the UN agencies and NGOs are very silent. Their silence, in addition to their silence, the fact that they are shaking hands with the bloody hands of the military and signing contracts or MOUs and providing their letters of credential and appointment to the military hunter, and such actions, such acts is not only that does not only mean that ignorance of the suffering and of the people, they are being complicit to the military hunter in committing further atrocities. I strongly call for effective actions to ensure that Myanmar people enjoy the basic human rights and humanitarian rights. The very perpetrator of our suffering is the military hunter. So I would like to make the following request in order to gain contribution to end the suffering of the people and towards building a future that we all want. I call on UN and INGOs to thoroughly investigate and advance the difficulties in the country to provide necessary assistance to the displaced community. People have been suffering for over a year. It is important that they listen to the voice of the people, to stand by them, and to deliver the aids directly to the people. I request the National Unity Government as the public government of Myanmar that I would like to request NUG to connect and interact with the international community, in particular to help and save and provide assistance to the IDPs. I also like to request the local and international donors to recognize and support that assistance and the capacities of a local organization like ours, and join hands with us to assist local organizations and networks who are providing much needed support to the areas in need. We need your help for the people of Myanmar to win this revolution, to eliminate the military dictatorship and establish a future federal democratic union. It is important to stop the murderous acts of the militaries and their atrocities. That it is important that you join us in supporting the people of Myanmar in our struggle and strive for peace and democracy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sama Grace, for the very powerful intervention with concrete updates from the ground, as well as very concrete recommendations as well to the international community to listen to the voice of the people and to work directly with local organizations and responders who are on the ground doing the work that must be done. As you just mentioned, these atrocity crimes are taking place on the ground, not just in Sagaing, but throughout the country. And next, I'd like to move on to Mo Premia from Karenni State. There has been intense airstrikes and artillery shelling, as we understand, that's really become almost a daily occurrence for months at a time in Karenni State. So if you can please tell us about the situation for the displaced people there, as well as in southern Shan State where they have fled, which has been enormous if you consider the size of the Karenni State. What are the current needs of the IDPs and the local responders who are bravely standing up to resist the military and support their own communities as international aid remains blocked by the junta? Premia, the floor is yours.
Thank you. My name is Premia. I'm from the Karenni Women Women Organization, and that I would like to share with you on the situation of the Karenni State, as well as on the situation of the IDPs and the challenges the community are facing on the ground as well. In the Karenni State, since the 1st of February 2021, the very first day of the coup, that Karenni State was known for their very strong CDM movement or civil disobedience movement. Karenni State actually is, geographically, we are one of the smallest states in Myanmar. We only have 300,000 people, but so far until since May of 2021, we are now have 200,000 IDPs in our state, and that in May the military started to do their clearance operation, and that there is also direct conflict with the People Defense Forces. So military started shelling at different places across state, and they will use airstrike, area bombardments, and they started targeting the civilian community in the Karenni State for that as well. With the more and more the strikes and when the strike operation, a lot of people also have opted for the armed resistance. So since May, the people of Karenni State had ended up as IDPs, and we have to flee to be able to save our life, and we have to survive in the jungle. We have Dimoso and Pekho, and also we have related our areas. So most of them are in Dimoso, Fruso, Raiko, and then Mobia and Pekho, which is right on the Shan State border as well. Most of the IDPs try to run away to the jungle to be able to find shelter as well. Sometimes they will also set up temporary shelters in groups, and they will survive there as well. Sometimes some of them, because we are close to the Shan State, they will run away to the Shan State, to the areas like Taungji, and to be able to find shelter as well. That and then when the IDPs do not have much of a preparation to evacuate themselves, but to have to run to the jungle, the military would send drones, and then they would fire upon the IDPs temporary shelter in the jungle. They also they use artillery fire, so that IDPs are also very targeted, injured as well. There are also civil society and that social organizations which are providing assistance to the IDP. These yes, who will not be spared, because they will be targeted for helping the IDPs as well. They would be shooting at those NGO, that civil society curse. They will be targeting and killing them as well, and that in addition, sometimes the IDPs will try to find shelter in the religious buildings or like churches. They would target monasteries, and that monasteries and churches that they will use artillery to target those areas where the IDPs could take shelter. With the escalation of the fighting and more interrogation and checkpoints along the transport road, it is very difficult to bring humanitarian assistance to the people in need as well. If we bring the food supplies from Yangon, they will be very suspicious that this could be used to provide assistance, and they would ban those supplies as well, or they would confiscate those supplies, and then they would arrest the driver, the transporter, and those people who are carrying these products will be tortured. Some people also have disappeared and never made it back home as well. So that although when the people of Myanmar are trying to help each other, it's very difficult to bring supplies from one township to another. Whenever we bring those, when transport these material, they have to go through the checkpoints, and they will make sure there are a lot of blockades and disruptions to stop these supplies from reaching the community as well, and that they would, whenever they ask questions and they think this, if they suspect that these supplies could be used for the IDPs, that they will ask like, where are you bringing these food supplies to? And they would ask questions. They would interrogate them so that the merchants and the transporter will think twice before carrying these food supplies and items. So it make it really difficult for us to have access to the emergent urgent need as well. That if we have important supplies, we cannot get immediately to the IDPs, and there is also unnecessary delays as well. That and then what they will also, if there are more IDPs in the area, there will be more checkpoints, and there will also be they will also conduct more checks, the security check against these the transport of the supplies. And what they will do is they will also threaten people with the trumpet charges. They will arrest people for no reason and file charges against them and put them in prison. So it makes it really hard to, even if we have donors, to get the supplies from the donors or the point of procurement to the IDPs. In some of the cases, some of the IDPs they are in desperate need and they want to go back to their own homes to be able to get some of the supply. They can no longer go there because their houses have been destroyed by the artillery fire. Their houses has been part of the houses that were burned down, and the military also have put a lot of mines in the urban area, in the villages. So if the people will go back to their area, people, when they come back to get some supplies from their houses, sometimes they step on the mines, and some people were killed. Some have lost their body, some were maimed as well. And some people, they were just trying to get some supplies because they are starving, that they have been killed by that as well. Some of the people try to go back to get some supply, and they have never make it back to the temporary camps either. Since August and September, that in the recent months, that the military is stepping up in terms of airstrikes. We are seeing the higher number of airstrikes in our area. People try to take shelter in the churches and monastery. According to the international laws of engagement, that the monasteries or the churches to be spared with never to be targeted. But military does not follow the international rules of engagement. They would target if they find that there are people staying in the church, they would bomb the church. They would rain artillery fire on them, and often they would send these fighters just during the middle of the night while the people are sleeping, and people have to run away in the middle of the night in the darkness. They cannot even find slippers, as it is the rainy season. It is raining, but people cannot think about the weather. They had to run for their lives to survive in the middle of the night. And for the children have no more access to education. That sometimes we also try to open our own voluntary schools so that children can continue some form of education. But these schools will be targeted. These schools will be will be short. So some of the children have to be always be run for their lives. So children cannot even have access to informal education as well. And the children are so traumatized by the bombing and the bombing. And whenever they hear that the planes are flying overhead, they would have to stop learning. They will immediately have to run as well. Where they run, it is not safe either. So wherever they go, there will always be military fighters just following them and shooting at them and bombing them. So children, despite their willingness to study, they are very afraid to go to a school or to be in a simple place together as well. And the children have lost access to education around that. Even for these very small voluntary school, we don't have much to for the learning aids or the material for the support, that the children are suffering a lot. The fighting has been prolonged, so we don't also have much of donors to support them. There is, because of the economic crisis, also we are seeing also less support also for the IDPs, and that the families are facing the issue of the food insecurity as well, and that they need equipment for the shelter as well. Women and children are facing psychological traumas and concern as well, and that we also have seen the major cases of massacres and killing, and that whenever they see that women or children, they will not care about who the people are. They will check the people, they will conduct the race, and then they will arrest arrest the people. Once they arrest the people, they will put whatever charges you want, and that people will be detained. People will be that if you can find some money to to bribe them to free what they like, but some unfortunate souls will be killed during the detention center on their arrest as well. And that so that is that for women also, it is also harder when the women have to run away in the jungle for their lives. That often that women do not have enough food to eat, and that when they have when these are pregnant mothers, their children are stunted. That they often give birth to that undernourished or that preemie babies as well. The children do not have access to vaccination as well. So we have to be very worried about this situation in IDP camps, and that often the pregnant mothers will give birth to that underweight children. The children do not get any kind of vaccination. They are not being that are taken care of in a proper hygienic places. And it's the same the same hardships is also for the elderly people, that the people seem to be thinking that we could die at any time, any day or night, that the people have to be always to be ready to wake up at any time to run away from the area airstrike. So people are suffering from that, not only from the lack of food, but also from that stressful conditions or living as well. We are every day that we are running as well, that we are seeing people getting injured on a daily basis, that we don't have access to medical care, and that every day we from 10 to 12 civilians are dying because of the nutrition as well that diseases and that other injuries related to them. But we are not getting assistance from the international community or international organization as well. If the international community want to support us, want us to survive, want Myanmar to for restore democracy, to end the retrocession, we need the support from international community. Doesn't matter how many lives we are sacrificing or what kind of the challenges we are taking. If the international community continue to sell weapons to the military, if they continue to sell the military aviation fuel, if they continue to sell weapons to the military, they are in a way, these countries are prolonging the war, prolonging the suffering of the people as well, because they are in a way they are contributing the death and and the casualties of the civilians on the ground. It is important for international community to understand that the more they are the lack of support they give, or they're being not stopping the military from getting their hands on the weapons or the fuel, they are in a way adding to the number of people being killed on the ground as well. And that people have to right now we are on the ground, we suffer a lot, and that we try to, and whenever we go to the community on the ground and people talk about that what they need, when we go to the walk on the ground, that they are having, so there is so much material need as well as psychological need, and the trauma they are facing, the fear they are facing, and that whenever some of them are not even getting the effects of the psychological issues and the trauma they face every day, and that often that sometimes that there are also those who will take the risk because they need to support their family. They would try to cross to the neighboring countries without any documentation. They have been arrested. They were never able to come back home or find work to support their family. Those people are also being ended up as victims of human trafficking and others as well. For this revolution to win, for us to achieve victory, for people to be able to survive, to be able to restore democracy in Myanmar, it is important that international community, take awareness of the violations or the human rights violations of military, and therefore ASEAN international community need to take action and need to take action against the military as well. It is important to stop engaging with the military hunter. It is important, yes, to condemn in stronger terms the actions of military, but it is also important to follow that with a concrete action to support, because every day and every night people are being targeted by the artillery. You cannot sleep your night through, because you have to be, that every night there will be the fighter just coming to fire at you, and that you will have to run for their life. It is important for the community to take this into consideration, to stop selling military aviation fuel to the military, to launch for an international and this embargo against the military as well. It is also important that UN already has made resolutions, and that it is important that resolution do not stay on paper and they need to be implemented on the ground as well. And that it is also important to make humanitarian aid effective as well, because we are right now on the border area. It is important to engage with the local organization or the border-based organization who can bring the humanitarian assistance effectively to the community and need the ground. UN say that they are providing humanitarian assistance, but this is not reaching the hands of the people who are vulnerable, who need it on the ground. It is important to make sure that humanitarian assistance needs those communities on the ground. There are IDPs in the urban areas, and I understand that they are also IDP, but the IDPs who are in the urban area for 3 months do not have the same hardship or difficulty as the IDP who have been there for a year, who have been there for nearly 2 years right now, and they are in a great suffering. It is important to take into consideration the depth of the suffering, of the challenges they are facing as well, and that it is that local organization know best about what is happening on the ground, how many IDPs and which area, how long they have been in that area, how long they have been IDPs, how long they've been on display. That information is in the hands of the local organization. It is important that the international organization engage with the local organization as well. And these displaced community, they cannot stay in one place because of the attacks of the military, and they will be always on the move. But they need to have a secret, confidential and that secure channels so that we can bring humanitarian assistance to the mobile IDP population as well. It is also important for the UN international organization to step back in providing humanitarian assistance to the community in need. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mopemia, for that very strong intervention on the situation of Karenni State. I think we got a very clear picture of what the situation is like on the ground for those who have been displaced and continue to be displaced. But beyond the humanitarian, to hear more on the side of the UN Security Council, as well as what governments can be doing now to address the issue, although there are difficulties on reaching the IDPs on the ground, there are much more that can be done beyond just the provision of these humanitarian aid, including arms embargo, sanctioning jet fuel, and all of the recommendations that you offered to us today. So thank you so much for your strong intervention. I think this is a great segue into hearing from Siama Ken Omar, who, of course, I think many of our participants know well from her decades of experience in engaging with the UN and engaging with the international community on the human rights situation in Myanmar. Recently, we have seen you give your testimony to the UN at the Human Rights Council in Geneva. So we would really like to hear from you about, how this humanitarian situation, the human rights situation, is placed within this ASEAN context as well as the UN. In addition, Progressive Voice, we did launch a briefing paper on the Sagaing situation with many of the recommendations that have been already given by our speakers today. So maybe if we can hear a little bit more of the briefing paper as well. Apologies, before we go into your intervention, Siama Ken Omar, just want to remind our audience that we will be having a Q&A after hearing from Siama Ken Omar. So if you have any questions, please do utilize the Q&A box, which is located on the down below of your screen, to send us your comments as well as questions. And I saw a comment saying you do not see the interpretation button on the bottom. If you do not see the interpretation, then you may need to update your Zoom in order to access that. So please go ahead and log out and log back in after you've updated your system. Okay, thank you so much. And Siama Ken Omar, the floor is yours. We would love to hear from you about how you view the current situation in Myanmar and the international community's engagement.
Thank you, Rin. Thank you for this. I would also like to thank Karen, Kristen as well, UUSC, USCB, and MIRA also for convening this very critical discussion. And my special appreciation to my sisters, Grace, and Premier for your testimonies reflecting the realities and your community's voices from the ground. And thanks to all the amazing work that you all do on the ground. So thank you. Dear colleagues, also thanks for joining us today. As Rain already slightly mentioned, of my years and years of engagement with this UN systems, UN human rights bodies, and international community, ever since for the last, like 3 decades, yeah. And it's been quite, I just have to say that this is the most disappointing time that I have come to the point of like, I don't even know where to really talk to and how to really talk to the international community to really see what is there on the ground and how our Myanmar people are sacrificing for the future, sacrificing their futures and their lives for the future of their young generations. And that in this Spring Revolution, Burma, Myanmar has the largest opportunity to move forward. The only thing that we're needing is the international community's support, which means that this is what we're lacking at the moment. And that's quite deeply disappointing for us. But then let me also start by saying that in the last few weeks, probably, I feel a little bit hopeful, just a little bit hopeful compared to the past months, to see that there's been increased keen interest and discussions on the humanitarian crisis in Myanmar, but also where the things are on the ground, like the ground realities. Many of the international actors, most of the international actors, didn't really grab the realities on the ground for so long. And now I started to see some of the discussions and on the narrative of the reality on the ground in Burma is somewhat a little bit hopeful. But since the crisis on the ground is extremely dire, as you already heard from Grace and Premier, we really seriously need the international community to act now, urgently, with effective responses, rather than just keep discussing and debating and being stuck in the discussions and the debates whether these humanitarian aid cannot be delivered in this way and that way, because the reality is there are means and ways where the aid can reach to the people that local Myanmar and Burma people communities have been already putting on their shoulder for the last year and a half already. So I think there's no need to be debating anymore. It's just to act. So I'll come to that, how we act on that. But I just came back from Human Rights Council in Geneva, where I was also updating the different various missions based in Geneva on where things are on the ground, where the solutions is, of course. That actually includes, our call on the international community not to rely on the ASEAN, 5-point consensus, which is no longer relevant to the reality on the ground. It has been failed already. It's been more of a time delay where, the military actually, just take advantage. And in fact, just keep waiting for something that cannot be producing anything is not good for anybody at all. But the worst is the life and death of the people of Burma on the ground for day and night. I think that is something that I really try to keep also informing also in Geneva. And one thing that I also find is that at least some of the international community, I think, started to see that the how barbaric this military is. But then, like, my question is like, well, you have seen it 5 years ago, at least 5 years ago, by on the every international TV screen of how this military committed genocide against the Rohingya. So what is there more to actually see of how barbaric this military junta could be, right? So it's also very frustrating at the same time. But with that, I hope that those of you who joined today's discussion will help us bring our messages further to the actors who can actually act, who can make the decision and actually respond with the actions. I think that's what we are really looking for, also support from your end as well. For the Progressive Voice, we've been raising our concern with the anticipation of this humanitarian catastrophe will loom soon, and that's been since last year, mid-year of last year. After seeing the level of atrocities this barbaric military started to commit in response to this nationwide outright rejection of their illegal coup attempt. And this is not new to us. So we know this is coming. And this is also based on our experience being close to and working for a long time with the ethnic community groups who have for decades had to endure such brutality. Their communities have endured such same brutality from the same military for long, such as the Karenni. So together with our ethnic community partners, we've been raising our concerns, providing solutions, while addressing the crisis on the ground to the best we can, to make sure that the aid can be reached, the aid reach to the people in dire need as much as we can. And that's what we've been doing for a year and a half now. But when Upper Burma regions, the dry zone, came under severe attack by the junta, we knew the situation there will be far worse for the people where the land is flat and also the geography itself is far from the border regions. So while trying to support the ground needs, we also decided to come up with a briefing paper entitled Setting the Tinderbox Alight, the Humanitarian Crisis in Myanmar's Dry Zone. And we launched it a month ago. And I'll speak broadly to the contents and findings of the paper in this sharing with you today as well. The paper was produced based on interviews with local humanitarian aid providers and also with desk research, including news and reports by humanitarian and human rights organizations. It provided a snapshot of the humanitarian challenges and the local responses in Sagaing, Magui, and Mandalay regions from the start of the military's illegal coup attempt until the July of this year. And these regions cover a large geographical area of central Burma with the hot, dry climate, of course. And most people in these areas, like you heard from Grace, being largely Buddhist Burma majority, had never experienced military attacks prior to this coup attempt and do not have the pre-existing specialized social structures or the mechanisms to deal with such mass displacement under this kind of heavy attacks. And like many other ethnic minority communities who have developed these systems, local capacity, expertise over decades of violence and cycle of displacement due to the attacks from the same military. Yeah, so it's a very new for the people in the dry zone or the Upper Burma. Despite not having a long history of humanitarian crisis, so that even though they don't have that before experience, there's been robust local responses being developed in a short time period since last year, and these initiatives needs to be supported. These initiatives need to be supported, and that's what we are trying to get the message to the international community, donors, the UN agencies. So now a month has passed since we launched this paper. Since then, we've continued to see the crisis increasingly deteriorating, with the junta continuing the same patterns of violence, the scorched earth policies, and the atrocity crimes highlighted in our briefing paper continue. Heavy airstrikes from Mi-35 fighter jets, ground troop artillery attacks, burning down villages and homes, mass killings, including elderly and children, and rape and sexual violence. And recently was on the September 16th when the school children were actually attacked by the junta from the fighter jets, as our moderator already mentioned. And you can see one of the photo in the background photo behind me. That's where the school children are actually hiding from the junta's attacks in Sagaing. Here, I would like to remind all of us that this junta continues weaponizing humanitarian aid. They repeatedly block, confiscate, destroy, and manipulate the distribution of aid for their political and strategic advantage in their ongoing attempt to assert control over the country or to assert their legitimacy, which the country people continue to be resisting very strongly. Yeah. And by doing so, what they're doing is also they're really choosing where and when the aid will be distributed, also attempting to starve the communities who resist them. And these atrocities are happening in other areas, not only in the Upper Burma, but also in other areas like the Karen, the Chin in the West. And this is a time-worn tactic by this military, they use. And these atrocities amount to war crime and crimes against humanity. That is the very reason we're calling on the international actors, the humanitarian actors, and the UN agencies not to work in partnership with this group of war criminals and who are the root cause of such immense human suffering for the Myanmar people. And yet, despite these red flags from us, some UN agencies such as the UNICEF, OCHA, FAO, IOM have publicly signed new agreements, presented the letter of appointment to the junta. We have publicly raised this red flag since December last year, and now again on September 23rd. Nearly 640 civil society organizations sent an open letter to the UN Secretary General expressing our condemnation in the strongest terms of these recent actions by these UN agencies, and call on the Secretary General to intervene for a principled, coordinated UN response to the crisis, and also we call on him and all UN entities to immediately cease all forms of cooperation and engagement that lends legitimacy to this illegal murderous junta. Instead, we ask them to actually present those letters and agreements to the legitimate government of the country, which is the NUG, as well as also to the ethnic revolutionary organizations, the EROs. The needs on the ground are immense and urgent, dear colleagues, but international humanitarian organizations and the UN agency, the reality is they are not able to reach to those most in need. The interviewees for our briefer who are providing humanitarian aid to their communities have already told us there is no international humanitarian presence in those areas. IDPs are being supported financially and subsisting on aid provided by local humanitarian actors and civil society organizations and networks, with the support from the donors who understand the ground realities and also trust the local leadership of the Myanmar people, and also support from the diaspora, in addition to the support from local administration committees of the Spring Revolution, the NUG, their neighbors, relatives, and friends. That's how the people are actually taking care of each other at the moment. The UN and INGOs or the agencies or the donors, we want them to adopt a solidarity approach to humanitarian assistance, put in the welfare, human rights, human security, and strengthening the local agency and resistance for the displaced communities. And these local actors must be at the center of the solution. We call on the meaningful commitment to the localization of aid, using the local frameworks in recognition of the agency and effectiveness of the local actors. And also, I think there is a very important point that we need the international actors to recognize the nexus between distributing aid through the junta and the suffering it creates, also the risk of the human security. I think that's a very important point. Many actors sometimes, just don't tend to be attending or paying attention to. International actors really, they need to really stand in solidarity with our people, not walk through the junta, which is the root causes of the humanitarian and the multidimensional crisis of Burma. So if I can say you the last point, like if you recall the UN's efforts to address the Rohingya genocide in 2017, it was too insufficient, impotent in face of systemic and structural failures of the UN. Well, now it's time for the UN to correct that course. The UN entities must stop lending legitimacy to the junta and emboldening the perpetrators of these atrocities. They have to stop. They have to stop. They cannot bring Myanmar come back to another cycle under the military regime like they did in the past. Instead, they have to stand with the Myanmar people, resist this junta, and support the local responders and the democracy movement, and uphold the principle of humanity to aid those. So how do we actually do that? How does it look like in practice? They have to be practically, actively in solidarity with the people. And that will mean a shift away from the traditional top-down institutionalized international modus operandi of humanitarian aid to localizing aid in a way that supports local agency and resistance. And that is actually for the long-term sustainability for Burma. So I think that is what we are really looking for. And our paper have detailed the recommendations of this, how that can be actually happening. Of course, further details can be actually discussed if these international actors will actually, create a safe environment for the local responders to be a part of the discussion and dialogue and finding a way in equal partnership to work together to address this crisis, right? So I think that's what we are looking for. And I'll just stop here and back to you, Rin. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sama and Omar. Really, I think we get the feeling from you that the calls from Myanmar have been very clear, especially with these joint statements and people of Myanmar still out on the streets with their calls, despite all the risks involved, trying to voice their recommendations and offer their recommendations to the international community. And of course, these calls are also not new, as you mentioned. These calls, especially to the UN Security Council, have been made back in 2017 and 2018 during the Rohingya genocide. So really, we are looking for action, and that is what is being asked of the international community. Thank you very much for your intervention. We would like to take a few questions from the audience. I know that we're approaching the hour, but if we may go ahead and extend for perhaps about 10 to 15 minutes so that we're able to take at least 1 or 2 questions from the audience, if that is okay. Okay, if that's okay, then I do have a question already. And this question, I think, links very well with what has already been discussed so far, especially with Sama and Omar. It's really about what, it's quite difficult for organizations to support for example, the humanitarian aid efforts on the ground. There's a lot of challenges with this. And it really comes to some of the policy that is needed to change, for example, for the flexibility of donors, to make sure that there isn't an onerous reporting requirement for civil society, for example. So for these organizations that are not on the ground, but are at the advocacy and policy level, focusing to discuss with state actors, with the US, with different governments, what are some of the things that they can do to really help ameliorate, so really help to solve this situation in terms of outreach and advocacy? What can these kind of solidarity organization and international INGOs be doing more at this moment? So this is one question, and maybe we can start with this question and take a few more. So if I can go ahead and ask any of the speakers today if they have anything they would like to offer these organizations that would like to be in solidarity.
Thank you, Rin. If I may start, so thank you for this question as well. I think at least there are two solidarity support that our solidarity networks friends can actually help. So one is to immediately reach out to their governments, and get their governments to actually act by, for example, every country's governments have their programs, for such situation, like support international, the funding, for example, and the resources. Yeah. And these agencies, the government agencies, donor agencies, they really need to actually work with our local responders. And how do they do that? Is also they need to hear that the government has to actually give the green light, such as like, you know, what we're calling for is that the flexible funding, direct funding, you know, from the small, medium to the large. The local groups have the agency and they have the experience, they have the trust, they have the system. So basically what they need is only the trust from these donor agencies. And many of those donor agencies are also kind of like, you know, there's a ball being thrown back and forth, like, oh, we don't know, like our governments have this and that of the, you know, like a strict, this traditional, you know, standard operational procedures, da, 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 da. I think those are the things that what we need to actually, you know, like inform to the governments to change the policy for the flexible funding and also no burdensome reporting. The people on the ground are actually risking their life to save the other people's lives. So let's not put those, you know, like burdensome, onerous reporting stuff. And how do we do that? So we need to change the policy. So please reach out to your governments and also your Congress, your parliamentarians, to actually change this discourse and change the policy. So that's one thing. And yes, of course, I think, you know, all of us together, if we raise our voices more collectively and much louder, I think there is a better chance of, you know, speeding this up to get to the result. But the other way is really, we cannot wait, right? We cannot wait. So basically, like I said, the Myanmar people are supporting each other by so many creative ways. Join us and join us, you know, like reach out to us and join us. And you know, like there are many ways that we can work together creatively. And the donors, they're individual, like, you know, foundations, family foundations, and there are donors who understand the ground, and that's it, you know, like who can actually, who probably haven't come to know the situation in Myanmar or the crisis in Myanmar, but once they know, they might be, and they will be willing to help. And how do we reach out to them? So help us also make the linkages to those like-minded donors and philanthropist communities who are able to, who will, you know, who are willing to stand with the Myanmar people to resist, to end this military tyranny, while also saving the lives on the ground. I think that's very something I will just end here. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Sarah McKenomar. Mo Premio or Sarah Grace, is there anything else that you would like to add?
Thank you. I would like to add a few more points to your question, right? The first point I would like to make is that for the IDPs, the IDPs in our area, as I discussed before, our IDPs are mobile because they have to displace for their safety and security, because the entire state of the Karenni is no longer safe as well. So it is important to establish like zones where the humanitarian zones where the people can take refuge as well. And when they provide humanitarian assistance, I think it is important to, there are local civil society organizations and local responders. It is important the assistant to go through the local organization as well. And then when the fundings are provided, the situations are very extremely dangerous as well. That the local organizations are providing the responses to need we are risking our lives. So we desperately need flexible funding because for the women and that people who are in on the ground, that sometimes you know, whenever that even as a civil society workers, whenever we go and provide assistance in the field, we often wonder, will I be able to go back home? So it is very difficult in our situation. We don't have electricity. That the road access is also very difficult. It's not a normal situation, and we have to go through a lot of security checkpoints and barriers and difficulty, and that we have no way of knowing about what is happening, and then what's many other area to be able to find the checkpoint. So we have to go through a difficult stages to be able to reach that community in need. So it is important to bear that in mind as well, and that that the perpetrator, SAC, that it's not that you know, that rather than just collecting data on their record, keep record of the human rights violation, we have a human right, that we have also a lot of human rights defenders, the local organizations who are telling about the violations on the ground. Shouldn't these cases be collected in a way to you know, send it to the international accountability mechanisms to take action against the perpetrators? Thank you.
Rin, can I actually add a little bit more following Premier as well? I think, you know, like really, we really need to stop this military from committing all of these crimes. And I think the UN agencies, being a part of the United Nations, you know, to uphold the humanity and democracy and human rights protections, they really need to step up. They need to step up. They need to work with the EROs. They need to work with the NUG, you know, like, I mean, if they are willing to sign MOUs with the junta, knowingly that they cannot do anything, knowingly that the junta will scrutinize them, why not work with the people's government and the local constituencies and the local political leadership of the country, where they can actually, you know, really support the support or help the people that their missions are supposed to be doing. So, I mean, like what Premier said is also true, is because the thing is, with the how the military is using, especially the air strikes, yeah. So if we cannot stop the jet fuels, or if we cannot stop these military weapons going to the junta from like Russia and China and India, and you know, like this is like, where are we going, right? So we need the UN entities to work in tandem, like really work in tandem to stop this military. I think that is something that is no excuse, should be no excuse for not, you know, like working together among those entities, including with the UN mechanisms for accountability and justice to hold these military perpetrators to account. I think just another thing that I want to add is that we really need the neighboring countries to also allow the safe passage for the people who are fleeing from the violence, yeah, the civilians. Like just today, we saw the video of the villagers from the Karenni State who being pushed back, the Karenni civilians being pushed back by the Thai authorities, and the one boat basically, like, you know, sunk. Thank goodness all the adults were able to, you know, save themselves. But imagine what if there were elderlies and sick people and pregnant women and the children on that little boat. What would happen with this, you know, like a rapid, like a water, the currency of in the river at the border, right? So I think it's just really like trying to get the government, like our colleagues here, the governments and the UN, to really also, you know, like come down to the ground and see what's happening. And I don't understand why the Secretary General will go to Ukraine and yet not to Burma. This is really annoying, you know. So I think we need these international actors to come and see the reality of the people of Burma and act. So basically, we need the neighboring countries to also show their humanity, and the governments, I mean, you know, like to really show their humanity and the, you know, like also share the responsibility of their international obligation to protect the people's lives in Burma. Yeah.
Thank you, Sam and Omar. You actually answered another question that we did have about what the neighboring countries could be doing more to address this crisis. So thank you so much for this. But I will see if Mo Premier or Sama Grace, if you have any thoughts on the neighboring countries and what they could be doing more. If not, there is another question on the ASEAN. So we do know that ASEAN will be having a summit next in November. And this coming month, there has been many discussions from especially Malaysia about the failed 5-point consensus and where the 5 consensus will go. And this will be discussed in the coming summit. So we do know, especially with the point number 4 of the 5-point consensus, that humanitarian aid provision through AHA Center is included. So we would like to hear from you a little bit about the role of the AHA Center and ASEAN in the 5-point consensus, and where do you see this 5-point consensus going, and how could this humanitarian aid be reframed within this ASEAN's dialogue?
Maybe I'll go ahead if Premier and Grace also have some points to add. Like I was saying, the time has passed after a year and a half. The ASEAN 5 points are no longer relevant to the Myanmar crisis. And that's why our organization, together with our partners, are calling on the ASEAN to move beyond these 5 points. What does it mean? Yeah, to move beyond. So basically, there are some good steps, unprecedented steps that ASEAN has taken. For example, like not allowing Myanmar, the leader of this military junta, and not allowing him to attend the ASEAN summits or like that. But also in last ASEAN ministerial meeting, the ASEAN given 3 months extension for the progress, 3 months extension to the junta to show the progress of the 5 points, right? But the point is, this junta is totally non-compliance, total disregard, right? Total disregard to these 5 points. So yes, given another 3 months, okay, but now the ASEAN is now at the verge of making a decision. They have lost so much of their credibility. They have lost so much of the trust from our Myanmar people and beyond. And I think what is also most important is also that Myanmar crisis is actually impacting the regional peace and stability. In fact, the ASEAN's all the ASEAN's plan, all the ASEAN's this community building plan, unless Myanmar crisis is resolved, ASEAN cannot move forward. So now it's really encouraging for us to see that Malaysian Foreign Minister Dato Saifuddin has been showing his good leadership in the ASEAN, and he is the one leading voice to really address this Myanmar crisis and also from the right side. Yeah. So what we hope is that in the coming next 2 months at the ASEAN summit, not only that military representatives will all be stopped from entering or attending all the ASEAN meetings. We need more steps, because stopping them from entering the ASEAN meetings is just one good step in the right direction, very, very concrete step, because it also show how the ASEAN will no longer tolerate with this murderous barbaric conduct, right? But we need a solution for Myanmar. We need a solution for Burma people to solve the crisis. How will ASEAN do that? The only solution and the most viable solution, more also feasible and also morally imperative, is to work with the NUG and the EROs and with the Myanmar civil society. The ASEAN leaders must listen to the people of Myanmar and work together. And I think in that step, there will be a lot of programs, including the humanitarian. Work with the NUG, work with the EROs, but not work with the junta. There are a lot of ways that ASEAN can help with the humanitarian. But let's go down to the bottom. The AHA Center itself is not equipped to handle a man-made multidimensional crisis. They are a natural disaster, mechanism to deal with the natural disaster. So ASEAN alone or the AHA Center alone cannot address the Myanmar humanitarian catastrophe. So that's the very reason we're calling on the ASEAN leaders to actually tell the Security Council, brief the Security Council that they cannot alone do this, and tell the world, don't rely on us. Because now, like, you know, I mean, the US government, the EU government, and everybody is kind of like relying on the ASEAN and its 5 points, knowingly it is failed. So ASEAN needs to be honest and frank and telling the world, hey, we cannot do it. And let the international, like a Security Council to step in, meaning the Security Council to adopt a resolution to address the crisis by including, you know, stopping the jet fuel, comprehensive arms embargo, targeted sanctions against this military, and also referring the Myanmar situation to the ICC, the International Criminal Court. So that is the way that we can all work in tandem together to stop the violence on the ground, prevent further atrocities, and yet also for Myanmar to address the very needs of the people on the ground together with their government and the EROs together. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Sema Omar. We are definitely coming up on the past the hour already. So if I may invite any of the speakers, if they have any last comments before I hand the program back over to Karen to wrap up. Sema Grace or Mo Premia, Sema Omar.
I won't say any more. I spoke too much already, so I want to give the floor to my sisters. Thank you.
Okay, then Mo Premia, yes, please go ahead.
Yes, Leslie, that and like Siama Kioma has mentioned, that ASEAN 5-point consensus is not working and is not enough. It is important that SAC will, you know, what they will do is that they will go till the end, and they are very committed to the end that they want to achieve, and that is important to understand that their actions is not new. This is not new. The way they have been acting is not new. For the past 7 decades, we are all very familiar with the way the military has always acted as well, and that after 2021, it has become more evident that they are violating all the international rules. It has been very clear as well that you know, but and that if we just giving them a long time to do that, then they will not stop their murderous or that atrocious behavior against civilian as well. For us, that it is important. There are many ways the ASEAN can contribute to that helps to the crisis in Myanmar, and that they need to engage with the NUG. They also need to continue. They need to work together to find a solution as well. We also have a local organization providing humanitarian needed. It is important that if ASEAN were to provide humanitarian assistance, they need to know what the local organization doing. They need to engage with the local network organization to see what are the needs, what are on the ground, what are the challenges, what do the people want. They'll be able to really hear what the people want and people are saying on the ground as well. In our state, we have a lot of civil organization as well as all there are already local NGOs as well. It is important to listen to the voice of the voice of the people, and they also need to understand what is happening on the ground. That is important for the ASEAN to be able to work effectively in Myanmar. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sema Grace, any last words? Okay. Then, if we are okay, I will like to hand the event back over to Karen. Just a quick note that apologies, we did receive many questions and we were unable to accommodate all of the questions. One of them was about the blocking of humanitarian aid in Rakhine State and about the Rohingyas being affected by the ongoing fighting between the Arakan army and the Myanmar military. I think I will hand back over to Karen, but there will be future webinars, I believe, that will be organized that will be discussing on the situation in Rakhine State. So back over to you, Karen.
Thank you, Rin. I just wanted to say thank you to our speakers, Grace and Mal Premier. Thank you for sharing your powerful statements on what is happening on the ground today in Central Burma and Karenni State. it's really good bringing all this information up and sharing these stories just to really show the impact of what's happening on the ground. And hopefully, having it brought up to these types of events, really helps the international community understand what's happening on the ground. And to Mari, we are very grateful for you taking time out of your busy schedule to share your valuable knowledge and information. We truly appreciate it. And thank you to Rin for moderating the event. It was a very compelling event, and we do appreciate you moderating it. And thank you to you, our audience, for joining and sharing your wonderful questions. We really got into some great discussion here. As our event comes to a close, let us remember to continue lifting the voices of the impacted communities, the IDPs. Their rights to seek safety and receive needed humanitarian aid is repeatedly threatened and requires immediate action from the international community through coordinated, targeted actions, through targeted sanctions, global arms embargo, and a respect for the norm of non-refoulement when we look outside Burma. As the IDPs and refugees of Burma continue to flee their homes, suffer in poor living conditions, and survive with limited access to humanitarian assistance, our work is far from over. Alone we are one, but together we are many. With that, we have the power to make a difference. Together we can work to support and aid the people of Burma. And that's something we really need to come away with today. And as we look towards future events, thank you, Rin, for bringing it up. Please be on the lookout for our next event and the Right to Seek Safety series in October. Thank you for everyone for joining us. I hope you all have a good evening and good night and a good day wherever you may be. Thank you, everyone.